In this week's episode, I'm going to talk about a subject that's probably a really key subject for people in a sales situation. It's one of the questions I get asked a lot around, are you following up enough on your prospects? Let me talk through this and why this is so important. And it's probably going to be a bit shorter as a podcast, but the comments and the thoughts in here are really, really critical. Because one of the things that when I talk to lots of business owners and also salespeople, two things that come to mind that come through on a regular basis that are related to this. The first is that people don't like to follow up that much, mainly because they don't want to appear pushy and they don't want to be seen as that salesperson or that person that's becoming, for want of a better phrase, a pain in the backside. So that they don't want to follow up enough, follow up too much because they're worried about being seen as that person. So that's the first thing. But the second thing around sort of the follow-up process is that people just, in my experience, don't do it enough. And they expect to see results after 2 or 3 times of engaging with someone. And I think that's not the case. And you've got to follow up on a regular basis. So I'm going to share in the podcast a couple of things around some numbers, why the numbers show is key, how you should then do it, and also some things that you can use at the end. And I'll share a couple of ideas at the end of what you can do to try and be different in your approach with this. But I'm also going to share with you one small tip before we do this. So what I mean by following up is, let's say you've had a sales meeting with someone and you've had a good conversation and you want to then be in a position where you move that conversation forward. One of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do at end of every meeting that you have, every sales meeting you have, no sales meeting should ever not have a definitive next step. And let's just say the meeting you've had is that you've had a good conversation with someone and you've got to, give them a proposal, not a proposal, send them some information. What I would always do in that situation to ensure that you avoid this issue in the first place is to say, look, really enjoyed our conversation today. What I'd like to do is to set up a conversation with you in a week's time, 2 weeks' time on Thursday at 4 p.m, just so we can check in as to see where we are and see if there's an opportunity to do something. If there's not, no dramas, no problems, totally understand. But if there is, it enables us to move forward with a plan. And that bit at the end where you say, you give them the option to exit out is really key. If you try and arrange a follow-up without giving someone that, then people can be a bit reticent to do it because they feel that they're going to be sold to at that time. But you should always have a date and time for the next follow-up. And sometimes I had a case this week where I did a proposal with a very large organization and that person accepted the meeting and she then came back and said, I'm on holiday that day, therefore I can't make the meeting, and declined the meeting. So it does happen. Look, so I'm now in a position with that person where I've sent her some information. I do think she'll get back to me because she came from a referral, but at the moment I don't have a definitive date and time. So the question is right now, how will I be following up with that person, and how often will I do it, and where will I do it? So the first thing is this. I certainly won't do it just once or twice. I will look to probably follow up in this particular case probably 8 to 10 times over the course of the next 3 months. So what I will look to do is my services, and this person's interested in some sales training or some business development training for about 30 people in their organization. They're a large financial institution. I will be following up about 8 to 10 times over the course of the next 3 months. I will be following up across a different range of different channels, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So I'll use my example. As I say, this lady said, yes, I'll even give you I could even show you the screenshots where she said, yeah, happy to accept it and come along. And then she said, I'm on holiday, so she can't make the meeting. But the reason why the follow-up is key is that you have to understand that prospects, we as business and salespeople see things on our plateau and what we want, which is, I want to do business tomorrow or do the business in the next week or the next month. And unfortunately, the people we work with are on a different page to that. They are not in the same place as we are. They might have and a part of that is about the questions that we ask them. In the early stage of a conversation, you can't just say to them, what are your timelines to do this, because that feels too pushy. So the reason follow-up is key is because, we've got to continue to be visible in their mind. The studies and the numbers show this, and there's a great, if you look for Google Zero Moments of Truth, it talks around how Google identified years ago that you need 7 hours of content across 4 different media, across 11 different interactions across 4 media. So 7 hours of content across 11 interactions across 4 media, 7, 11, 4, for someone to trust you, to want to work with you. So if you've just had 1 to a half-hour meeting with someone and then 2 emails that you sent to them, you've not built up enough momentum with that person to get you the result. And there was also a study done a number of years ago and I think this study is actually probably a bit out of date now. I think the number's higher. And it was from the American Sales Institute of Sales or something like that. And they showed that 80% of sales happen between the 5th and the 12th interaction. So I'll say that again. So 80% of sales happen between the 5th and the 12th interaction. So in other words, if you don't follow up between 5 and 12 times, you're missing out on potentially 80% of sales. And I think in most cases, most people tend to try once or twice and then stop and then think, oh, it's not going to work. I don't want to become a pain and go from there. So the way we avoid becoming a pain is to try and get that meeting booked in early. But the key thing you've got to do is to make sure that you don't just do this once or twice, but do it over a period of certainly 5 to 12. I've shared this before. My record is 19 times with my software business before with a lady that I wanted to work with. I shared 19 times. I followed up with her over a period of probably 7 months. I continued to chip away, and I'll share with you how I did it as well in the way I approached it. But 19 times over 7 months, I continued to chip away. And you've got to remember that if you don't do that, the chances of you getting results are going to diminish as a result of that. So we have to show persistence. Now, here's the thing, there's a but to this. You have to persist in a way that's not just focused on you, but focused on the person you've spoken to. And this is the big mistake that I see so many people make. And if there's one thing you can take from this podcast, it's please don't send follow-up messages that says to someone, hi, so-and-so, just wondering how you're getting on with that proposal. Because what that does is it says to the other person that you're messaging and talking to, hey, I'm just finding out what's interesting to me. I don't really care about what you think. I'm trying to serve myself. And when people say to me, where are you at with that proposal? I generally ignore the email unless I really need to make the decision that I've got a specific problem at that time. Most of the time I will ignore it because it's focused on what's right for them, not what's right for me. And most people don't buy the one. In fact, the majority of people don't buy because of, they want to please a salesperson. They buy because they've got a specific problem or desire at that time they want fixed. So the way you should follow up, it should be, firstly, the timing should be linked to your sales cycle. So if your sales cycle, obviously, if you are doing event hospitality and the event is in 3 weeks' time, then of course you've probably got to follow up every 2 or 3 days up until that point. But if your service is probably a 3 to 6 month service, and a lot of people listening to this will have services that can take sort of what I call the sales cycle, which is from the moment you meet someone to the moment they pay you, can be a bit longer, then you've probably got to be in a position where you follow up maybe once every 10 days, 7 to 10 days. So if you're following up every day and every other day and trying to call that person's going to think, oh my God, this person's becoming pushy and overbearing, too much too soon. No, not interested. And even if you do, even if you have got a 2-week window or 3-week window, calling someone 5 times a day is not right, okay? And you are going to get not just blocked by that person, you are going to hurt your brand. They're going to see you as a pain in the backside, and they're going to tell other people to ignore you. So please don't think that type of pushy sales approach works. It doesn't. It really just pisses people off, and it's going to create a brand for you and going to make people think, no, I don't want to work with that person. So link your timing to your sales cycle. Again, in my case, the person that I'm engaging with, as I mentioned, the story that in the case that I've got at the moment, I would expect for me to do that work with that company. I've put it as a potential opportunity that might close by the end of September, October. So I'm recording this in July. So there's 3 or 4 months for that to happen. So on the basis that it's 3 or 4 months, I will be engaging with that person probably once every 7 to 10 days. And how am I remembering to do that? I have a CRM system. So CRM, which is customer relationship management, will remind me to follow up with that person. It will remind me to send an email to person every 10 days, or to call them, or to drop them a message on social media, or to do whatever is needed at that point. And that comes on to the next element, which we'll talk about. So be consistent, but not overbearing. If you are consistently in that person's inbox, social inbox, giving them a call, leaving them a note, every 10 to, again, depending on the sales cycle, but I think every 7 to 10 days, if your sales cycle is similar to mine, and just being visible to them, then I think that then people are going to go, okay, that's great, and that's okay. And it's them again. And the Rick Stein, the chef, I remember being in Padstow once, and Rick Stein, the chef, remember there was a book signing that he did, and he said something about it's not your customer's job to remind you that you exist. In other words, don't rely on your customer to come to you or the prospect to come to you and say, hey, I want to talk to you. You've got to be visible in their world. And the way to do that is to make sure you're doing it consistently. And how often would I stop? I certainly wouldn't stop after 10 times. In this case here, this lady I'm engaging with, I will engage with her certainly for the next 10, 15, maybe 20 times over the course of the next 6 months. Of course, if she comes back to me and says, thanks very much, things have changed, whatever's happened has gone a different direction, or they've chosen another provider, then I wouldn't do that. But even then, I'll still sometimes put a note in my CRM to remind myself to follow up maybe 3 months after that, just to say, hey, I hope things have been going well with the provider you chose, and then share an insight, which now leads me on to my next point. So timing is key, but the key thing to do when you're following up is to follow up with some value on the follow-up. So what do I mean by value? So in the case of the customer that you've had a conversation with, you should have, if you approach this conversation the right way, you should have been talking to them or listening to them about their challenges. You should have been asking them questions as to what's driving them to want to have a meeting with you. What's the challenge they're looking to fix at the moment? What's causing them stress and challenge as a business owner or as a person or whoever you're talking to? And you should be finding out about that. And there's a search on my YouTube channel for James White Sales, and then my LAPS model, which is listen, ask, probe, summarize. It's a really bulletproof method to be able to approach any first sales call. But if you're digging into that person's world, you should be able to summarize what's actually going on in that case. Now, in the case of the lady that I mentioned at the start, I've dug into a little bit of the world of what she's going through. And at the moment, what I'm hearing is that organization don't feel that they are closing enough business. They don't feel that they're doing enough to engage with prospects to grow. And they've got a concern around that because they're missing targets. So classic case where I normally get involved in things because people feel that way. So based around that, my follow-ups to her, and she's in the L&D team, so she's the person responsible for buying the training and then it's delivered to other people in her company. I will be sharing insights and value around that she can share with her team. So I in my follow-ups, I'll be saying, hi, so-and-so, when we spoke, you mentioned an issue related to this, this, and this. Here's an article I created that hopefully might be helpful for you. Or I might share a piece of research. So it doesn't have to be my research, but it might be research that's come from the marketplace, and I might share that with them. So what I want to always be seen as is I don't want to be seen as someone that's just pushing for the react for the input. No. I don't want to be seen as someone that's pushing for my own benefit. I want to be seen as someone that's creating value and adding value on every follow-up. And the value doesn't have to be a huge amount. It can just be something simple, or you had an idea, or you found a link to something, or that when you spoke, she mentioned this, you wanted to just share and help that. And if you can try and give people something, the law of reciprocity is really strong. And in lots of cases, people will feel then obliged to come back to you because you're giving something to them. And it doesn't always work, but in 50% of the time, you can get a reaction from someone because you're helping them and supporting them rather than just being able to say where we are with a proposal. So and if you're not sure what to say, again, you write this down. A simple email could be, hi, so-and-so, really enjoyed our conversation when we spoke X weeks ago about what you're looking to achieve. On the time when we spoke, you mentioned X problem and this issue. what I've done is I've identified a couple of resources that could be helpful for you, and I've linked them here. Look forward to catching up and speaking really soon. I will try and call you next Thursday at 4 p.m. just to see how things are. So what that does is, A, it shares a research article to that person, which makes them think, oh, this is helpful, this is great. But the other kicker that you'll see at the end there is that you've then said, I'm going to try and call you at 4 p.m. that Thursday. So you've sort of preempted them that you're going to call them at that time. And because of the fact you've shared something, given something, it doesn't mean to say they're automatically going to pick up the phone, but it can help them go, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to, when someone rings or if they ring, okay, yeah, as I mentioned, I'll call you at 4, today to see how things are. It gives that familiarity, and they feel a bit more obliged to talk to you because you've obviously shared something with them. So the reality of your approach is to really try and add that value. And the other point, which I mentioned at the start a little bit, is to use different channels to do this. If you're continually doing email, or if you're continually doing the phone, or continually doing social media, then the chances are that person's going to get fed up with you and maybe even block you. But if you can use, again, through a framework that I create of, let's say one day, let's say if we do this across 10 days. So day 1 to 10, you might do an email. Day 10 to 20, you might do a phone call. Day 20 to 30, you might do a social message. So what you do is you plan out these elements over this time so that person is continually engaging with you over a period of time, and they're thinking, okay, it's James White, and I want the person that I'm going, have this lead with to think, oh, James White, he's a sales trainer that is quite helpful. He's got some articles, he's got some resource, he's quite useful, he's quite helpful. That's what I want them thinking, because even if I don't get that deal at that time, I still want them thinking that I wasn't a pain in the backside for them, but I was someone that was useful and helpful that could really, help them and their team do things. So really, use different channels to follow up. Another great way to use this is also direct mail. So I have some printed cards. In this case of this lady that I'm talking about, I will drop her a printed card. Now, even though she's in the office only sort of 3 days per week and works at home the rest, I will put a card or a letter together in the office. Now, I wouldn't be creepy and put stuff in there, but I would just put I saw this article and forward to you. Sometimes I've even printed off the article that I've got and put it on a bit of paper and sent it in the card to them. So you can do different media to be able to follow up. Remember what I said at the start? Google 0 moments of truth, 7 hours of content across 11 interactions across 4 media for someone to trust you to work with you. So really, don't give up on too soon, but follow up consistently based upon your sales cycle and across different channels, and you're going to increase your chance of success. And use a CRM system to remind you for this. You're a human being, especially if you've got 10, 15 different prospects and contacts you're trying to engage with. It's critical that you have a CRM system or an alarm on your phone, or put a note in your diary, in your online diary, that will remind you, hey, follow up with such and such today. It's so important, because what happens is we're busy, we get involved in other stuff, and suddenly, before we know it, we've not engaged with someone for 3 or 4 months and the opportunity's gone. So those are the elements of how to follow up. And you may find in time someone's going to tell you to go away, or that things have changed. It does happen, right? It may well be that the meeting that went, and one of the things that often happens, and this is why I talk a lot about emotional intelligence in salespeople, you thought the meeting was great, but that's because you talked all the time and they didn't feel that you listened to them, and therefore, even though they agreed the date and time for the next meeting, they were keen to cancel it because they didn't feel they could build a connection with you. So sometimes that does happen. Remember to use it. That exit of when you're giving someone the chance to say, hey, look, let's arrange the follow up. It may well be that there's not an option to go forward, or it may well be that I'm not what you're looking for, or it may well be that we can't provide you that service, or it may well be that you choose another provider. Hey, if that's the case, we'll be disappointed, but I'd rather get some honest feedback from you than become a pain. And what it'll hopefully do is give people that ability to commit to those follow-ups with you. And if they then don't, share that value and share that insight over a period of time. And then the final little tip, as I mentioned at the end, which is useful, is just add a bit of humor in it as well. Sometimes being humorous is a great way to do things. And in the case of this lady that I'm going to be following up with, I'll also use video. So I'll use a tool like Loom to do a little video to send to her that will say, maybe if she doesn't come back to me, let's say after 2 or 3 months, I might do a little video to say, hey, So I'd say, well, I just wanted to check, hey, things are okay, because I thought we had a great conversation, and maybe I've got it wrong. I'm just let you know, I'm going back to sales school because I've obviously got it badly wrong. And hey, I'm so sorry that I did. Just wanted to wish you all the best for your project, and please let me know how I can improve in the future. Or before I leave, I'll tell you my best joke just to make you smile on this Tuesday. Something, a bit of humour sometimes that can be a little bit different. That can make people think, okay, that's cool, that's fun. It can actually be a different way to actually make the follow up not appear as intense and focused on business as you might think. So look, these are the ways to follow up in the right way. Please, if you are following up once or twice, and I did a survey on LinkedIn a few months back, and I think the reaction was maybe 60% of those that voted only follow up between 1 and 5 times. I think you're missing out on opportunities if you do that. You have to commit to the process, but you have to commit to it with value, and to be in a position where you do it linked to the timing of the deal. So, if you follow up too much, I heard someone the other day say I tried to ring someone, 4 times in a week, and I was like, okay, desperation is a stinky aftershave or stinky perfume. If you appear desperate, it will not work. But if you do follow up with value over a period of time, it will get results. And to finish, I'll share a story, actually. In fact, I'll use this as my inspirational story because I think it's perfectly linked to this element, really. And it is a bit of an inspirational story. I don't think I've mentioned this as a story. If I have, then apologies, but it links into today. So there's a postman called Mark Johnson, and Mark Johnson was, I think it's Mark, I'm going to double check his name, but he was a postman who basically wanted to caddy for a guy called Sergio Garcia. Now, Sergio Garcia is basically a professional golfer, brilliant golfer. He won the Masters, brilliant at what he does. And there's basically a picture of Mark Johnson, who was a postman from Peterborough. And Mark basically wanted to caddy for Sergio Garcia. And he was, as you, this is an inspirational story because I think it's fun. He wanted to caddy for Sergio Garcia. Now, to be a caddy for a professional player, it takes a huge amount, right? They don't just bring anyone to this is their person to work with them when they're trying to win a golf tournament. This is huge. So, they don't do it with anyone at all. But Mark Johnson, said, "Oh, well, I caddy for Sergio Garcia," and he tweeted him to say, "Hey, but Sergio, let me caddy for you." And of course, Sergio Garcia ignored it because sadly these people get lots of messages on social media, etc., etc. So they left it from there. And but Mark Johnson didn't give up then. So for 206 days in a row, he used a hashtag on Sergio Garcia's social media to say, "Let me caddy for you." And after 207 times, Sergio Garcia said to him, "Okay, you can do it at a Pro-Am event that he's holding." And there's a great story. We'll put a link into the article around how Mark Johnson got the dream that he wanted, which was to caddy for Sergio Garcia by tweeting 206 times the fact that he wanted to do that. So I guess my inspirational story, and then Mark Johnson's inspirational story today, is don't give up. If your dream is to do something and to add value and to help someone, in his case, he did just commit to probably being a bit of a pain in the backside, but he wasn't selling something as such. But the point being is he was doing something to get the result he wanted. It takes time. It takes work and effort. You're not going to get there from just you're not going to get what you want just from the odd message here or there, or the odd reply here and there, or from doing it once or twice. You have to be consistent, but do it in a way that doesn't make you seen as a pain, but adds value. And if you want to test out, if you want to drop me a message or connect to me on social media or drop me a LinkedIn message, you've sent a message and you think, oh, is this the type of message I should send? Let me know. I'll try and have a look at a couple of them and see if what you send is going to be value based. But what it shouldn't do is be focused on you. It shouldn't be about we and I do this and we're about this. It should be about the prospect and them. Use you, and you mentioned when we spoke you had an issue. The issues that you challenged are this and this issue. Should we focus on those elements rather than anything else? So that's it for this week's podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that it's going to give you some momentum and insights on how to follow up effectively. Follow up can work, does work. It's the most important thing we need to do as salespeople and business people. So don't give up. Be persistent, but do it in the right way, and you've got a better chance of getting the right results you want. So That's it from me this week. As ever, thank you so much for your ears and eyes and listening to the podcast. Please give us a review if you can. We'd love to see more people get access to the podcast. It means I can get more guests on and cover all the stories and questions you want. And if you have got a question or topic that you want covered in the podcast, let me know, and I'll make sure I cover it in a future episode. So, and I can even give you a shout out to say that we've covered it as well. So that's it from this week. As ever, stay safe, everyone, and have a great week. See you soon.